Welcome, everybody. I think we can start. Yeah, we don't have a lot of time, and I don't know what you think, but the drawback of this conference this year is that we have very packed panel, which, well, it's not really panel, this one, it's just three presentations in a row, and very few time to question or discussion. And I'm also partially responsible of this since I was in the program committee, so I have to admit that. But yeah, this was the only way to let all the people, the interesting people that wanted to speak at this conference to show. So yeah, we will have very tight schedule. I will go through. This is Gabriele. Okay, it's our first speaker. So the title of this panel is "Reuse Meets Copyright in the Age of AI." Usually, copyright in the context of cultural reuse, of cultural heritage reuse, is a sort of conversation killer. But yeah, at least for me. But today we are going to disprove this preconception, and we are going to listen to three quite different but equally engaging speakers. They will give us some food for thoughts on the topic. We start with a truly, these are, you know that. And you also should know that by now. And we go, I was saying that we start with a truly multidisciplinary perspective to the complex interplay of reuse and copyright. And we welcome here Dr. Gabriele Aroni, which is a senior lecturer in game arts at Manchester Metropolitan University. Gabriele's unique background spanning architecture, digital media, semiotics, and game studies offer him a rare lens to examine how digital creation engage with our shared past. His presentation is titled Reusing Culture, Copyright, Cultural Heritage, and Video Games. And I will give the floor immediately to Gabriele. Gabriele?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for...
Yes. He's online. I mean, that's clear, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't said that.
Hello, everybody. Yes. Can you see me? I'm alive? Yes?
We can hear
Wonderful.
you. We cannot see you, but probably they can do something. Yeah, perfect. Now we see you also.
Yeah, okay. Wonderful. So thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for having me here again. So without much further ado, I will start with the presentation, so we can jump directly to the next slide, please. And what I'm going to talk about is copyright and cultural heritage from a legal standpoint regarding the creative industries and in particular video games. So the main issue is that copyright laws can be at odds with cultural heritage protection laws, since they consider cultural heritage as public interest, including moral rights, which are part of copyright. And at the same time, most jurisdictions, based on the Berne Convention and EU laws as well, recognize the end of copyright as 70 years after the death of the author, and thus much of cultural heritage will fall into public domain. So let's start with the recent controversy to illustrate your point, not a European one, but rather from Japan. Next slide, please. And exactly, as you can see in the video, a few months ago, actually, the Japanese Diet had a hearing about Assassin's Creed Shadows video from French developer Ubisoft. This game is set in 16th century Japan, and the series of Assassin's Creed has always capitalized on their semi-accurate historical reconstructions. The issue that was discussed concerned the possibility of, for the looks like someone in chat is pointing out that there are
the video is not playing. Can you play the video, please? Without audio, if it's possible.
There shouldn't be any audio anymore. Okay. And it should look quite safe. So, as I was saying, there was this issue that was pointed out, as you can see in the video, of the discoverability of this Shinto shrine. In the game was an act that was considered in poor taste by a large swath of the Japanese public. And indeed, Daigaku Oguchi was the Japan Deputy Minister of Economy, next slide please, stated that as a commercial product, Ubisoft should have obtained permissions before including the shrine in the game. The Prime Minister as well, as you can see from the quote, considered the issue to be very complex because it involved many parts of the government and the law. Ubisoft did ask and obtain permission for many other elements that they put in the game, not for that specific shrine. And in fact, they issued an apology and removed the possibility of destroying the shrine in an update of the game. Next slide, please. So the thing is that in Japan, at least, there are no specific provisions in the Cultural Heritage Protection Code regarding the reproduction of cultural heritage, and technically falls under the Copyright Act. So there have been, as usual, various points of view: the right to integrity, so for the heritage not to be destroyed; moral right, which cannot be waived, as that I specified. Japan does not have a fair use like the US, for example, and since it was technically a historical reconstruction, even the idea of creative transformation will likely not hold. So, as you can see, the situation is very, very complex. It didn't go into a lawsuit or anything. As I said, Ubisoft fixed the issue very, very quickly. Next slide, please. So, another example, albeit not digital in nature, is from 2022. The Galleria dell'Accademia of Venice sued Ravensburger, the toys, you probably all know it if I'm from Europe, toys producer, over a puzzle depicting the Vitruvian Man. So the Italian court ruled in the ministry's favor, but not the German one, arguing that the law, Italian cultural heritage laws, have no universal value, but only territorial. So it was valid in Italy, but not anywhere else. Next slide, please. So the Italian ministry based the case on their article 107 and 109, where it says that they have the right to authorize any reproduction of cultural heritage, including the one, and that's the important part, that is in the public domain, which is at odds with copyright law, which states that, again, copyright ends 70 years post-mortem auctoris. So, but nonetheless, that was authorized. Unfortunately, the case did not, these claims were not addressed properly in the proceedings, and it was limited to the issue of territoriality. So it worked in Italy and not elsewhere. So this point has not been explored in full. Next slide, please. In a few years before, in 2020, a similar, okay, so next slide, we can just go faster. Thanks. In 2020, a similar case, the Galleria dell'Accademia in Florence sued the magazine GQ for the unauthorized use of the David's image. Now, this case is of particular interest because they also referred to the Italian Constitution regarding the role of the state of protecting their cultural heritage, also in terms of moral damage. And in fact, the Court of Florence ruled in favor of the ministry. So how it worked here, unfortunately, it's not visible on a screen, but the cover of the magazine used a special lenticular effect, like the little toys we all had as children, with the image changes depending how we rotate the page. And so it would show the model and the David depending on how one moved the page. It was one single sheet of paper. And despite the model, evidently, as you can see, pulling off the David pretty well, it was considered that it was debasing and mortifying of the original work of art, which the state is due to protect. And so they were awarded, on top of the 20,000 euros, that is the normal fee for the use of the image for commercial purposes, 30,000 euros of damages. So in Italy, any unauthorized use of cultural heritage is considered tortures by definition. Next slide, please. However, as we can see, it's easy to find copies of supposedly protected cultural heritage on common video game marketplaces. So if I'm a game developer, I go on the normal, perfectly legal marketplace that I used to make my game, look for the David, and I pay 36 euros, and I get a pretty good model. And chances are the Ministry of Culture is not going to sue me. So next slide, please. So as we evidenced, we have a few issues. We have the issue of territoriality, as seen in the Ravensburger case. Each country might have its own protection laws, which are not necessarily the same as copyright laws, and especially entertainment industries and cultural heritage are a global issue rather than limited to the country, especially when it comes to digital heritage. We have a problem of enforceability. It's, of course, these are complicated cases, so even the institutions are not willing to pursue unless it's a high-profile case, as we have seen up to now, as we can see by searching any online 3D model database. And legality, as I said, copyright laws and cultural heritage protection laws are not always, and do not always agree with each other, even within the same territory. So next slide, please. There are, however, some solutions, which, in fact, especially Europeana is the perfect place to try and enact some of them, starting with harmonization, so a common framework for the use of cultural heritage reproductions, digital twins and other, in the entertainment industries at the European or even better international level. It's easier said than done, of course. Accessibility, in my opinion, would make a big difference. So simplifying authorization procedure. So as of now, there isn't much reason for any developer to seek authorization unless there is a direct collaboration, or if you are a large company like Ubisoft, for a small developer, spending time and resources in order to see signatures and so on might be overly burdensome. So simplifying procedure, using existing frameworks to make cultural heritage accessible in a way that the institutions deem appropriate would be a solution. And also shifting the concerns from the economical to the ethical. So there is reason to have ethical concerns about how the heritage is used, as we have seen in the case in Japan. Focusing on capitalizing on it, it becomes also more complicated in terms of accessibility. Last slide, please. So one example that I found is the one from the Korean Ministry of Culture that made some of its digital twins readily accessible for free online, not just on common platform like Sketchfab or others, or directly from them, but on game marketplace. So game developers can find these online for free and embed them directly into their game. So there's also the technical part. These models are already optimized to be used in-game. Now, in this case, is under Creative Commons license, so they can be completely freely reused, modified in any way, as long as there is attribution, which might not correspond to each country's laws of cultural heritage, but these stores usually allow for different types of licenses, which will make this a pursuable options by cultural heritage institutions. There was actually a session yesterday on common meta spaces for 3D models, and I remember Marco Medici described some of these issues of using this kind of spaces for hosting cultural heritage. So it's not necessarily a one-fits-all solution for digital twins, but it's definitely one way of putting out cultural heritage for the creative industries with some supervision and making it, however, easily accessible. Next slide, if there is, thank you or something, but that's the end, yes. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Gabriele. Thank you very much. Shifting now our focus to the perspective of policy and public access in our age of digital reuse. Please join me in welcoming our next speaker, Camille Françoise. Camille is a passionate policy advisor and program manager based in The Hague, in the Netherlands, specializing in emerging digital technologies. Camille is she's a board member of Wikimedia France and counselor for the Europeana Network Association. And Camille's presentation is titled, as you can see, Bridging Gaps on the European Public Domain, Strengthening National Collaboration for Local Engagement. And I will give the floor to you.
Thank you. Voilà. Do you do the slides or
no,
should I?
You
Okay.
can do it.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I will start. Or I'm not?
Yeah, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work?
Towards there, first of all.
Sorry.
The
Good
computer
point.
is there. Yeah.
Thank you. What I want to talk about today is basically the Public Domain Day. A couple of years ago, with a group of activists, we actually realized that we have some of the celebration of the Public Domain Day in Europe in some countries. But it's pretty sporadic, meaning that we only have a few countries that are doing like Public Domain Day, a conference, some events, workshops, and things like this. Among them, and I promise I will mention it, in the Netherlands we have that day organized every year. We also have it in Belgium, in Brussels. We had some events in the past in France as well. But in general, we don't see it spread over the whole European region. And we thought it's actually pretty sad to not see all those events spreading. So we thought we can do something about it. It was also difficult for us to actually identify and map the events and publication related to the public domain content, or celebrations. For instance, I don't know if you've ever seen the public domain review in the US. They publish every year, a list of content that you can check. And we don't have this at the European level, which is could be something that we can do. And we also saw that there is not really there is a lack of coordination and collaboration between the different countries, meaning that, for instance, in Belgium and the Netherlands, we do have a lot of collaborations. But what about Poland? What about Slovenia? What about other countries where we could actually work together to make those that day and those celebrations coordinated? Additionally, we also seen that there is a lack of diversity when we are talking about European speakers in events, and we want to have actually more diversity. So this was in 2022, and then we have actually launched. I saw you made a sign. Did it work? No. You can see my really good skills in tech. Yay! And so that's why actually we've launched the European Public Domain Day. What is this? It's basically us trying to make an effort to work together to make that event happen. Thank you. That's really nice. Why we're doing this? As you have kind of hinted to it, we want to hear new voices on public domain issues, but not only in our Western countries in Europe, also in Eastern countries in Europe. We want to highlight issues, collection practices. We want to advocate for the importance of the Public Domain Day. We want to share advice and build capacity. We've talked about this a lot previously. We do need this. We need to gather people in the same room and advocates. And this event, which actually already happened in 2023 in Brussels, in 2023, Sebastian, or 24? Every year. We did 3 sessions. Oh, wow. So we did it 3 years in a row, and we are preparing the next event. It is live stream for people that cannot join us, and every year we are doing it in Brussels for now. Why we are doing it in Brussels? It's very simple. It's also because we are trying not only to address practitioners' perspective, but we also try to influence policy making. We want to influence also the Commission. We want them to see at DG Connect, and we already have good contact. But why is it important? And to be able to invite them and make it a topic on the agenda. Oh, that works perfectly. That's amazing. So, what can you do, and how we can actually contribute as European member? We have the possibility to act together. We can, develop. You can develop your national activities in your own countries, work with the institution you're in, or with other partners to actually make those events, make the European Public Domain Day at the national level, and then contribute as well at the European Public Domain Day. Then you can, as I mentioned, contact like-minded organization. I'm thinking naturally to Wikimedia chapters because they are also working on Public Domain Day, and they can help you as well to make an event at the national level. You can indeed develop workshops, build capacity in your own language for your own practitioners, for your own policymakers. And obviously, as an institution, you can also ask people to in your teams, for instance, to actually highlight collections and say, well, at the national level in Slovenia or in Italy or, I don't know, in Norway, you can highlight your own collections. And then based on, for example, Europeana collection that you've contributing. And then join us at the European Public Domain Day. Today, we are actually announcing a lot of things. Outside of the fact that we will already have the date of the Public Domain Day, we are also launching this map of public domain activities in Europe. And as you can see, for the moment, we only have 2 points. But we also have a website called pdday.org that you can check online, where you can find that map and actually submit your event, your workshop, your collection that you're trying to highlight, so we can map at the European level and also at the international level, because why not, the event, so people can find you as well. So that's pretty cool, and please check that out. We are really happy to launch this, actually. Another thing that we want to announce is that because we want more representation, like a better representation, more diversity, we are launching this open call for European practitioners and advocates to contribute to the European Public Domain Day. Because we just don't want to stay among ourselves, we actually want new people. So we are launching it. You can already find everything online on the pdday.org. The open call is open until the 31st of September. We will quickly review the proposals, and then we will invite people selected. You can see the super good website. What else? Yes, just to mention, we have a sister initiative that I also mentioned that I will share. It's a Wiki Loves Public Domain. This is an initiative that is actually being launched right now by colleagues to celebrate the Public Domain Day, Public Domain collections. And basically, they are creating it now. You can also, stay put, because it's going to come up in the next weeks, I assume. And you can work with those chapters to make that event at the national level, for instance. And those are the partners, actually, which are supporting us in different manner. Financially, also from the space, and moral support. And so we are really happy with this. And that's over there. And that's a picture I like. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Camille. And now we can move to our final speaker, who brings a uniquely powerful blend of strategic policy insight and grassroots advocacy to the critical question of how we can build systems for ethical reuse in the AI era, which is a bit of the original objective of this panel. Please welcome Alek Tarkowski, Director of Strategy at Open Future. With 20 years of experience at the crossing of digital technology, society, and culture, Alek is a seasoned advocate for the commons, a sociologist by training, holding a PhD. He founded Centrum Cyfrowe, a leading Polish digital rights organization, served on the Creative Commons board, and provided strategic counsel directly to the Prime Minister of Poland a few years ago, right?
Oh, a bit more than that.
Yeah, okay. Let's sell it like this. Co-authoring national long-term strategies, okay? His presentation is titled Developing... No, it's fine. developing a books data commons. And Alex, the floor is yours.
Yes, the timing of me being an advisor to the president obviously has political implications for anyone who knows timelines of Polish government. Few years or several years, this is a different. So I want to talk about the books data commons, specifically a European books data commons, an idea that might sound abstract, but actually it's an attempt to do something very practical in Europe about cultural heritage, about its availability, but also about AI development, European AI development, and how we can bridge these two perspectives. This is an issue that we've been exploring at Open Future for more than a year now. And we started with a project that was about books data commons, but actually not a European one. We collaborated with Creative Commons and a consultancy called Proteus Strategies to discuss this in the American context. We produced a report, and I'm mentioning it here because it framed the issue. The question is, what role do books play in AI training models? If any of you know the so-called Books 3 data set, it's a very famous data set, largely because it's a pirate data set, and secondly, because it's used by almost every major model. It has been used. Probably by now they're not doing it anymore. But honestly, it led a lot of initiatives to serious problems, but also highlighted why they took these books, because training on books is simply very good and useful. So the question is, if books are important, how could you construct a good books data set and under what circumstances? And we understood training data commons, the term commons is sometimes used very precisely. Here we're basically saying a resource that is broadly shared and accessible and that is in some way collectively managed. Why would you want this data commons? One argument is you're leveling the playing field. It's a bigger argument that basically goes, the big AI companies will be fine with data. They already have proprietary data. They're using what they take from their own social networks, our own generated content. If needed, they make a deal and they pay 50 million, 100 million to a publisher. They will be fine. The initiatives that have challenges are Luther AI, national model builders. Today there was a Norwegian model mentioned in Poland. I'm very proud to say we have two very interesting models called Plum and Bielik. They have much bigger challenges, and this initiative could help them. But there's another argument to be made, and I raised this issue in the plenary panel today, this issue of simply costs of delivering data and using data. If you build something centralized, maybe it will simply be more efficient financially, but by the way, also environmentally, in a reality where otherwise everyone is just building their own data hoards, right? And copying everything again and again, setting it up again and again. Maybe we can just manage it a lot better in such a data commons. Secondly, and this is a lot more specific, shifting to a European perspective, late last year we became interested, we started thinking, oh, Google Books, what an interesting initiative. If you're thinking about books, the Google Books corpus is a pretty good place to start looking at. And we did a study, actually the study was done by students from a law clinic at the University of Amsterdam, sort of commissioned by us. Paul Keller was leading this work conceptually. We looked at the relationship, specifically at the digitization agreements. I don't want to go into details, you can explore the study, but basically, as you probably all know, the big issue with Google Books was that there were exclusivity clauses in these agreements. But these clauses, first of all, are slowly running out. From what we understand, not yet in most cases. This is not yet clear. But also what is interesting, and this is not in the study, by the way, I think the Harvard's Institutional Data Initiative was mentioned, I think by Sebastian today. This initiative is doing some kind of a soft launch later today, very interesting. It's an initiative that will release around 1 million of public domain books, and it's better to wait for the launch itself and hear the Harvard team say it, but it seems these will be Google Book scans. So this is a signal that there is a way to make these scans available, to reach some kind of an agreement. So basically it looks like the Google Books corpus is a very good opportunity to create such a data set. And third, important bit of background context is the European debate about AI development. There is something called an AI Continent Action Plan. Within it, there is a new data union strategy. These are all signals that the European Commission is thinking about AI development and also about data. And it's pretty clear, and that's the argument we have been making, that availability of training data, in particular cultural heritage data, and specifically books, is an important element of this effort, although if you read that document, it is not properly highlighted. So basically the question for us is, can you build a European Books Data Commons, and how could it contribute to these ambitions? But also, how can we ensure that all this aligns with the overall mission of cultural heritage institutions? And I want to say one thing again very clearly. This is both a sort of novel approach, asking questions, what does it mean to provide cultural heritage in a way that's effective, sustainable, and useful for AI training? But you immediately, it's worth balancing with saying this is not just for AI training. This is thinking about how to maybe work, in a setup where Google Books basically started, really long ago. Someone said today, OCR pipelines were even very different. Technologies moved on. It's an opportunity basically for really to talk about digitization again. We organized a series of very initial conversations together with Europeana. These took part online in the last 2 months. Some of you in this room took part in them. We invited mainly libraries that have been involved in the Google Books project, but also some experts, technologists working on such models. For example, Luther AI joined us, but also Barcelona Supercomputing Center, which are a very interesting institution that is a public supercomputing center. They build their own models. They are very much thinking in terms of openness and the commons, and it was important for us to get a perspective of developers. Here comes a kicker for a session titled, I think, Copyright Something Something, and I want to highlight it. The way we frame this, actually, for once, this is not a copyright issue. I feel I've always been working on copyright-related projects. Here we're talking about public domain, and really the goal is, there are many other issues to solve, but at least let's not face all the copyright challenges inherent in AI training, in figuring out how copyright exceptions work, in working with opt-outs and so on. Let's make our life a bit easier, and then maybe one day we can tackle the more complex issues, because surely there are also very interesting data commons to be built, maybe for out-of-commerce works, and maybe even for in copyright works, and with very interesting ideas, for instance, about remuneration that could go, from public domain through out of commerce to in copyright works. But that gets very complex, and we really would like to make something simple, because that's what I want to say. These European frameworks are often very good, but they kind of need to be brought to life. And we think there's really a need to do something relatively quick, therefore relatively still not easy, but maybe kind of simple as a scheme to make these frameworks a reality. We cannot afford to have one more European initiative that looks sort of good on paper, and then 5 years later everyone starts saying, oh yeah, one more great idea, we had a great framing, and not much happened, such as was the challenge with the Gaia X, the cloud initiative. I think this is always repeated. We don't want another of these initiatives. I'm probably running out of time.
It's okay.
Yeah. So what would this European Books Data Commons look like? It's a pretty simple idea. It will be a large data set of high-quality book scans plus OCR text freely made available for the purpose of training AI. It's probably an interesting thing, as I said, additional functionalities. Partially because thinking about how you can digitize OCR has moved forward over the years. There are also new pipelines that need to be made specifically for AI training. There are simply things that are good to be done. By the way, the Harvard initiative is really interesting. They say that's really their added value, figuring out what is a modern pipeline with working, for instance, with scans. But the interesting also thing is pay a lot of attention to provenance, keep the data that then gets transformed into tokens and somehow very weirdly wrapped into models rooted in this very solid knowledge that is and heritage. That's very important in a project like this. But this data commons should also be a collective effort of European libraries that would combine their collections. So there is a need for some kind of a collective governance mechanism. We think this is obviously public domain, so there are no restrictions on the use of the materials. But it's a good question, should there be some conditionalities? even simple questions, how do you deal with the attribution, we're signaling that this should be addressed. And there might be an interesting opportunity to talk about mechanisms that ensure sustainability. You know, this conversation we had in the morning, public mission, but also funding challenges. This is a good opportunity to work through that sort of on a very practical case. Sorry, is there something strange here? A few technical aspects. As I said, there is a growing awareness that there are economic costs of web crawling for collections, and this will need to be addressed. We hope, as I said already, that a project like this would address some of the issues with unsustainability of the current setup. A lot of developers, not the nice ones that we have in the room, but the big ones, like terms like crawling the whole web, working with things that are in the wild, you know. This is a very bad term, but this is the reality. We hope that maybe it's a good question whether the dynamic would work, but having such a centralized resource would kind of encourage them to sort of play nicely and make use of these resources, which would be more sustainable. But also, I think there's a big challenge. This quickly becomes technical, and we'll be exploring this further. If you want to share large AI training data sets today, for instance, Harvard, as far as I understand, will publish them initially on Hugging Face. They want to have a sort of multi-platform strategy, so they're signaling they're talking with other actors. But it's very hard to have really a public data sharing capacity. And I think this will be a big question. How do we do that? I think the answer lies in the AI continent strategy, where Europe is talking a lot about investing in compute, thinking about data centers. So maybe it's an opportunity. It would be great if this European data commons was not dependent on one of the commercial actors, although hopefully we can cooperate with them. So the short-term vision is relatively simple. Let's try to build this data commons. I think it's a timeline that's hopefully doable in a few years rather than several, working on the basis of the Google Books initiative, its partners. But I think there's also a more long-term vision. I signaled that this can be about not just public domain works, but more fundamentally, I think, you know, when you have a conversation with the model builders, some of them say we trained on everything, but the more aware ones will say, obviously we didn't train on everything, because the main barrier is that simply everything hasn't been digitized. And why is that an issue? Because there are biases. A lot of the very interesting efforts to build national models struggle with an availability of data that properly, for instance, represents the local culture. So I think, and we all know that also the Google Books effort has its limits. So I think there are bigger questions that hopefully, again, this initiative could start asking questions. Can we have a new digitization effort that would be sort of a digitization in the AI era? I think asking all these questions we had also in the session yesterday, what it means to represent knowledge, what it means to represent culture. This is not yet in the digital decade, but maybe we can put it on that agenda. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. We have time for 5 minutes. Okay, good. So I see a lot of questions, so can start from, I don't know, Johan, you raised your hand, and then... Wait. I think, well, we can use also this to make use of it. And if you can pass it, Johan.
Yeah, just a quick question to Alek. So what do you think is the number one or number 1 and 2 challenges that you're going to be tackling, also given the scope of your work?
Yeah.
Well, the next step, but I don't think it's a challenge, is providing a better, how to say, like a blueprint, not a vision, but we can make a blueprint for this. I think the big challenges I signal that are technical. There's a lot of technical challenges here. Copyright not in this setup. I think, I'd be curious to hear if anyone thinks differently, but I think the technical challenges.
Hi. Yes, thank you so much, all of you, for...
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but one more thing maybe worth saying. Again, not in terms of challenge, but huge need to cooperate. I really think what's important in this initiative is bring together libraries, the institutions, but then bring together these labs. And maybe I wanted to say it before you speak, because maybe you can speak to that. And I think it needs to be a shared effort.
actually, I don't want to speak about that because I don't want to keep speaking just about us and myself. I have three questions for each, one question for each of you, but maybe they're combined. Is the presenter from the first one still online? Yeah. Okay, great. Yes. So Can you put Gabriele on the screen? Okay, yeah, I can already ask my question. So I'm really, really curious with these exceptions that national laws try to make from the public domain. This is my big topic is like actual respect for the public domain and not trying with secondary rights to, imprison data that is clearly in the public domain. Do you see whether union right will actually break national laws, and do you see whether this is going to be adjudicated in the near future? And do you think that the Article 14 provisions for saying there are no related rights to visual works that are in the public domain will actually be enforced? Yeah, I wanted to like to your opinion on that. Then to Camille. I will come to the Public Domain Day, and if there's no chapter, I will found one. And lastly, Alek, I have a very specific question, whether that was tackled in your report, whether the Google Books exclusivity is actually something that only applies to the libraries. So the commercial use that the libraries are prohibited from selling the data, but because it's in the public domain, you can't ban anyone else from just using it freely because it's in the public domain. Google has actually no say in this because it belongs to the public. But of course, the library that has been a digitization partner cannot go around and sell the data. That would be my questions.
Gabriele, can you?
Okay. Yes. Well, that's a very good question, which actually comes up pretty often, and it didn't go to the European Court yet. Arguably, as you said, well, yes, that will supersede it, technically speaking, because the cultural protection laws are pretty much strictly at odds with the copyright laws of the Union. So that's actually a shame that the Ravensburger case didn't go on that. They limited themselves on territoriality because it was limited to the two legislations of Italy and Germany. So one decided one thing, one decided the other. At the same time, each country has still its own, sovereignty, so they can always keep the battle going. But in practical terms, yes, the European directive is pretty clear about the end of copyright 70 years post-mortem auctoris, and having something that is technical, that is actually even within the territory recognized as public domain, but with the caveat of requiring authorization, and in many cases monetary compensation, creates a de facto trademark on a public domain object. So yeah, that would be interesting to see that debated in the court. But if you just read it in superficially, well, that's pretty clear, relatively clear-cut case. It should be public domain. But then there's also this moral right. That's why they invoked the Constitution. So we have a duty as a state to protect moral and integrity of the heritage and so on and so forth. So there is a case to be made there as well. So it's very much up for discussion still.
Thank you, Gabriele. Camille, want to reply to?
Well, I will not really respond on the question of legality, because for me one of the issue is, to my understanding, is also the lack of definition of public domain at the European level. So I mean, I would love to see that in the future, actually, to be able to have this, because at this moment we have the Article 14 and then you have the public domain term in there, but then you don't know actually what it means at the European level technically, like legally. So there is this, and then what I can say is that I would love to see that at the European level, for instance, because for instance I'm French, and I can see that the National Library of France, for instance, does not allow reuse of public domain work for commercial purposes. And for me, that's a big issue, for instance, because it's a national library, and then you cannot use them for what means commercially. And we know as well that, for instance, what does that mean if it's non-profit?
My answer is quick. We didn't look at it. This issue has been raised. It's an interesting question that maybe the lawyers can look at.
So a lot of questions. We have the last one, I think.
Sorry, I think it's broader than publishing, but I need to check. Some of the, in general, the issue is not all of the agreements are public. A few have been made, so they can be analyzed, and they differ from, as far as we understand, from institution to institution. It's a quite complex landscape. Yes.
Hi, a question for Alek. I'm Sophie. I work for the Film Archive in Belgium, so I wanted to bring a little bit the perspective of an archive. And I thought your presentation was really interesting, and we have a huge collection of books that are related to cinema, and a lot of them are in the public domain today. And you mentioned a technical feasibility aspect, but I think it also relates to the discussion that we had this morning in terms of the value for the archives to also contribute to that. And for me, I can't stop. I have a background in media, and in the 2000s, we saw all of the media starting to share the content for free on Google, and then they spend the next 10 years afterwards to try to get back on that and actually make value out of this. And so as an archive, how can we make sure that we're not making the same mistake by contributing? I mean, we also have a different incentive that media have, because we have a public dimension that media company don't have. But I'm also seeing this, okay, we're going to contribute and give everything for free, but what do we gain as archives as well by sharing our content? So curious to know what you think.
I think I would like to say, because I think it's not about I have my opinion, but the interesting thing, this issue was not yet raised in our conversation. So I haven't heard a lot of critical takes about basically the kind of agreement that was made. I rather understood that at that time it was a fair deal, right? That balanced exclusive needs of Google to have exclusive use with the fact that there's really funding for digitization. I think it's a very valid question to reconsider how that works. I think immediately thoughts about reuse for AI training comes in, but maybe also other issues. But as I say, I feel that kind of goes beyond the scope of this project, which tries to make use of content that already has been digitized, that is in the public domain. But for that last slide thing, and I like to think more broadly, I agree we should have that kind of conversation.
Camille, you want to add something to this? Yeah, they told me that there is no time, but since my concept of time as Italian is a bit irritated, I will give the chance for another question.
My question is for Camille. Have you been discussing an observance day for the public domain day on a global level?
I'm sorry, could you actually explain?
For example, like the UN Observance Day, I think I Googled that it doesn't exist. I think it should exist. Do you think you could sort of take it on?
Sorry? You mean internationally? Well, okay. Well, I would love to see that. I think this would be really necessary. I think we should have one. It's the same way we have like Archival Day and we celebrate every year. To be honest, when we started this discussion at the European level, at the beginning, this project was called International Public Domain Day, because we wanted this. But then we realized we were only Europeans acting at the European level with our bias and also our Western approach. And then we realized actually it would be pretty bad to call ourselves International Public Domain Day when we are not international, we are European. And that's why we kept it at the European level, trying to act at that thing. We also obviously would love, I think I can speak on the behalf of our collective to say that, and I'm looking at people in the room, that we would love to see that. But then we need also to have those collaborations also in Latin America. We need Asia, Pacific, like obviously Oceania, for instance, to be also there. And we also need fundings for this, because at this moment we are gathering some very little fundings, to be honest. The funding that we have, it's to pay for the speakers and for the catering. That's the funding we have at the European level, which is perfect. We can rule with it, but it's like to go up and scale up at the international level, we need more fundings. We need people in different continents to be able to carry that out with us. And that's why I think this discussion is also already, we are discussing it at European level, and then maybe after we could manage that, to have that at the international level in collaboration with other groups, because we hope we will influence, by having this European thing, we could influence other people working on the same topics or somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. I know. Yes. No. I will stop here. No. You're right. Yeah. It's a clash between Italians. I would like to thank our speakers, Gabriele first, and Camille and Alek. And I would have had the chance to discuss about the paradox of open that Alek and Paul Keller defined over lunch. We will do it over lunch. Thank you also to all of you for your patience. Thank you.